Ghostbusters 2016. This movie is aggressively fine. And actually, I mean, that's even a little bit harsh. I actually enjoyed this movie. Like, I enjoyed watching it. I understand why... I don't know. Do I understand why it didn't... I understand my reasons for not being in love with this movie, but it's the type of movie I think would do well, and I don't know why it didn't, really. I know that they had big plans for this to launch a reboot of the Ghostbusters franchise, that they were definitely planning, they hint towards a sequel at the end of this, like, they were definitely planning to turn this into a bigger franchise. I do have some issues with the film, and some glaring issues, but also there were some things I really liked in this, and I'm really glad that we watched the films in the order that we did, with Afterlife being watched last week and then this one this week, because if we were sitting here, I would be like, if we had just watched 2016 and we hadn't seen Afterlife, I would be sitting here going, yeah, this one didn't do it for me as like a reboot or like a successor to the original franchise, but I don't know what would. And because Afterlife came out and we had the benefit of seeing it before this one, Afterlife is the reboot that I want. It pays homage to the original in a way that I think makes sense, but also sets up new characters, and I like the direction where that's going. I think that Afterlife does a much better job of setting up another franchise. But 2016 has enjoyable parts, and I can see why it didn't go well.
Honestly, I think I liked it.
Yeah.
I will say that I liked this movie more than I liked Ghostbusters Afterlife. And the reason I liked it is because
Your rankings are going to be all messed up.
yeah, I know.
What I'm hearing right now is Ghostbusters 2, Ghostbusters 1, Ghostbusters 2016, and then Ghostbusters Afterlife to finish it out.
Yeah. And it's because this movie, this Ghostbusters was essentially a superhero
Just
movie.
say it. You love Nate McKinnon in this.
Okay, we're not gonna say that because she was the worst part of this movie. Okay, but
I also said Nate McKinnon, and I think it's because Nathan McKinnon is a hockey player. Kate McKinnon. You love Kate McKinnon in this.
no, absolutely the worst part of this movie. But this movie is essentially a superhero movie. It has all the elements of like a superhero movie, and like it just felt like a superhero origin story movie. And the way they did it, I feel like it would have been, I think, the Ghostbusters franchise, if they would have continued from this, I think it would have been fine. I like how they set it up. I mean, I like how they did it. All the characters are original characters. They weren't trying to just do, in my opinion, they were original. They weren't trying to just do female versions of the original Ghostbusters, other than the fact that there are 3 white guys and 1 black guy. And then in this movie, they did 3 white women and 1 black woman. Other than that, I think that all the characters, they tried to do something different. There wasn't an Egon character. There wasn't a Ray character. Everybody was in the 2016 was their own characters. And
But then why call? But that, like, my question with that is, like, if it's not gonna, and but they do pay homage, I think, to the original in a lot of ways. There's, a lot of cameos. There's a lot of references. There's a lot of lines that are very much references. But, like, I don't know. If you wanted to make something totally different, that's fine. Why call it Ghostbusters?
I really don't have a problem with it.
I guess they're just using the name. I mean, yeah, if you've got
Yes.
4, there's enough there that I understand why it's called Ghostbusters. I like the way that Afterlife carries on the legacy a lot better, whereas this one rewrote a lot of the history. This one did.
Yeah.
This one disregards the original Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Well, see,
while making homages to it, which is weird.
Yeah. So Afterlife, I thought of Afterlife as more as a continuation. I didn't think of it as a reboot or a remake or anything like that. I just felt it as like Ghostbusters 1, Ghostbusters 2, Ghostbusters Afterlife. And
yeah.
So, but this Ghostbusters 2016, it was in its own different lane. And you said that you why would they call it Ghostbusters? And I feel like the same premise, and they called it something else and it went a
Yeah.
totally different direction, people would hate it more because then it's just, you're just knocking off Ghostbusters. So I feel like naming it
Yeah.
Ghostbusters is better than it not being called Ghostbusters.
Well, they called it just Ghostbusters, and that's why we have to say Ghostbusters 2016 when we're talking about it. But they call it Ghostbusters 2016, I think, really because it was supposed to be a total reboot of the franchise, and it wipes the slate clean. But I think that there's people who have such reverence for the originals that I think that's why Afterlife, I think, in the long run is going to do better.
Yeah.
Because it does pass the torch in a way that people who were fans of the original can say, like, oh, those are the Ghostbusters that I grew up with, and now these are your Ghostbusters. And like, I think that's what is going to make this, like, the continuity and like the fact that this is, now a longer running franchise versus, oh, my Ghostbuster is now a cab driver in this universe. Like, so I think that 2016, like, I'm not saying it shouldn't have been made or anything like that. Like, I think 2016 is good on its own because I look at it almost like this is a parallel universe where the Ghostbusters didn't become Ghostbusters and we got instead these other Ghostbusters. And like, that's a little bit of like me making up some canon. And I think that that's honestly how it's being treated because they just kind of wiped the slate clean when they did Afterlife of like 2016 never happened. I mean, we talked about it last week. Afterlife kind of treats Ghostbusters 2 like it never happened. So I think that 2016 has a place. I like some of the stuff they did. It's a fun movie, but I understand why it's not the start of a new franchise or the start of, a reboot of this franchise.
Yeah. And I think with me, Afterlife, I didn't like Afterlife because I went into it knowing it was a continuation, and Afterlife didn't feel like a Ghostbusters movie. Last week I said it kind of was like
a
Super 8.
Ghostbusters.
It just felt
Yeah.
like
Oh,
like
okay.
Super 8 Stranger Things.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to do that, if you're going to go a different tone with it, in my opinion, then just do what you do with 2016. I mean, don't make it I don't know. I just like, don't make it a continuation in my opinion.
So here's what it boils down to is that Ghostbusters 1, I'm going to leave Ghostbusters 2 out of this analogy because Ghostbusters 2 was kind of too cartoony, but Ghostbusters 1 walked a really fine line between being grounded and serious and funny. And it walked the tightrope. Ghostbusters Afterlife is probably a little bit too serious, and Ghostbusters 2016 is probably a little bit too comedy. And I feel like they both strayed away from what made Ghostbusters the original so good, in that they're too one or the other. There are jokes in Ghostbusters Afterlife. I don't think Ghostbusters 2016 is ever serious. But if you look at where Ghostbusters 1 started, I think that Ghostbusters Afterlife is the much better continuation of that franchise.
Yeah, I liked 2016 better just because of its the if you take there was like, it felt like too many jokes, right?
Yeah.
And so if you tone that down a bit and
Yes.
made it into, make this into, like, if they would have made Ghostbusters, because I said it was like kind of like a superhero movie for me. If they would have made Ghostbusters more like Iron Man, right, where it's got a nice little mix, and instead of being like Thor Ragnarok, where Thor Ragnarok had way too much comedy in it, I feel like this movie would have been better. So
Thor Ragnarok's like the best Marvel film.
Oh wow, okay. I can't wait to watch those movies. So
wait till we do our 22-part series and we're trying to rank all the Marvel films. I think that what's the best way to put this? I think that yes, 2016 we'll talk about it. It's got way too many jokes, and it feels like every line has to be a joke in it, and that it's not grounded in reality at all. I think that what's to what I was saying about Ghostbusters 1 is that, and it feels stupid to say about a movie about ghosts, but there's, you're talking about the presence of ghosts like in the real world, and they are all very like real people in Ghostbusters 2016, nobody except for Leslie Jones feels like a real person, and maybe Kristen Wiig's that character at times. Nobody else feels like real in that. It's very cartoony.
Yeah, it is kind of, it's goofy, it's cartoony, it's wacky for no reason. All the stuff people hate.
I don't have all negative things to say about 2016. I think that 2016 actually did Ghosts better than Afterlife did. I love the way the ghosts look in this. Granted, Afterlife didn't have that many ghosts. There was like Muncher and some other spoilery stuff that I won't get into. But Ghostbusters Afterlife didn't have very many ghosts. This one had a lot of ghosts, but the ghosts were exactly what I want from a Ghostbusters franchise. Like a little bit cartoony, but still a little bit scary, not way over the top. And then they did stuff with like the ghosts from the logo. That was really fun.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
And that's what makes me think this is more like a superhero movie. The way the ghosts are animated.
Oh, this one definitely has like production value. Like
Yeah,
I think that's what you're saying when you say this is like a superhero movie. Is this feels big budget? You know, they're blowing up buildings in New York at one point and stuff, and this is just like, this is what Ghostbusters 1 theoretically would look like today if they did it, because it was big. And like Ghostbusters Afterlife just isn't that big. Ghostbusters Afterlife is like a very small story as far as like they're in like a podunk town, you know, in Oklahoma. So I think that you're just saying like this is done up like this gets the Superman Man of Steel treatment of like these are big set pieces, you know, for big action.
Yeah, and more than just like that, I think like the bringing people together aspect of it, felt like a superhero movie. The way
it's also an origin story,
yeah, and the way their technology is done, it just felt like straight up like something Iron Man would say, like, hey, this is a blah 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 and a blah 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 and blah blah blah, and this is how to, and you don't do it like this, and it's just like, I don't know, it just felt this, I don't know. I classify this as a superhero movie, and I love superhero movies. I haven't gotten the superhero fatigue yet, and so this movie it was just hitting a lot of good spots. Also was hitting a lot of bad spots. So don't get me wrong, I like the movie, but I'm not in love with it.
Well,
there's a reason people hate it, and we'll get into that later.
Name is Kate McKinnon. Stop fucking saying Nate McKinnon. What the fuck is wrong with me? Kate McKinnon.
He is a very big part of it.
All right. Well, why don't we get into the plot and we can talk more about it?
All right.